Right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sandeep Bhatia, and I welcome all of you to the fourth edition of the Way to Wealth BFSI webinar series. Life insurance is generally thought of as a protection tool for individuals to secure the future of their dependents. It, however, has various products and applications to help businesses and their owners deal with the fallout of unforeseen circumstances, legally ring fence their personal wealth, maintain company valuation, and improve employee retention and satisfaction. The purpose of today's webinar is to highlight these applications in more detail. Some of the topics which will be covered today include keyman insurance, employer-employee insurance, and the partnership insurance. It is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Mr. Prashant GS, Associate Vice President at ICICI Prudential Life Insurance Company Limited. Prashant has over 2 decades of corporate experience, which over 17 years have been in the life insurance sector across various functions. He currently heads partnership distribution channels for South India. Prashant has conducted trainings and workshops for various bank employees, wealth managers, and corporates on topics like risk management, financial planning, and business insurance. Prashant is an MBA by qualification. He also holds a fellowship of the Life Underwriter Training Council and a financial service specialist from the American College, Pennsylvania. In his leisure time, Prashant likes traveling and exploring locations with his close friends. We have scheduled time for a Q&A session at the end of this presentation. Please feel free to post your queries via the chat window at any time during the webinar. We will respond to as many questions as possible. We look forward to a very informative presentation. Thank you so much. Over to you, Prashant.
Thank you very much, sir, for a brief introduction. Very good evening, all of you. I welcome you all for this webinar. As sir rightly mentioned, we'll be taking this session on business insurance, and we'll have this session for about 50 minutes, and definitely we'll have the window open for all the question and answers. Feel free to ask any queries in the best of the capacity. I will answer right there. And some of the questions, in case if it is due to the paucity of time, we may take those questions and we'll revert to you on probably latest by tomorrow. Yeah. With that, we'll directly move on to this session, sir. Am I audible, visible to everyone clearly? Just one confirmation and acknowledgement. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Is the screen visible to everybody, sir?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, thank you. So very good evening to all of you once again, and welcome to this webinar. As rightly mentioned, today, most of us, when I talk about life insurance as a subject, we all know that life insurance is one of the income replacement tool for the economic loss that has happened to our families. That's at an individual capacity. At the same time, with the evolution of life insurance products and a lot of schemes and concepts, we also have life insurance as one of the tool for business insurance solution. So the topic what we'll be doing today is how life insurance as a tool can help not only in ring fencing the economic loss, the replacement of economic loss for the family, but as an organization, there are some key personnel in the organization, and also for that matter, how we can ring fence our personal wealth, which is created for the family members' purpose. It should not affect just in case if there are any business adversities that can happen with some of the decisions we have taken. So today we'll be talking about some of the topics. Is the screen moving? Sorry. Yeah. So as the agenda is talked about, we are talking about introduction to a business insurance solution. And some of the key concepts we'll be learning today is we are categorized into 4 units. One is definitely the Married Women's Property Act. It is an act of 1874. It's as old as about 144 years. And let's see how this act come in rescue for some of the business owners in ring fencing their personal wealth, which are created for the family. And we will also talk about key human insurance, which is very popular. And we will also talk about one of the concepts called employer-employee insurance. And lastly, we'll talk about the partnership insurance. And of course, at the end of the presentation, before we take on to the question and answer session, we'll just summarize as to which insurance is applicable to what type of business owners and what type of employees in the organization. So, as I told you, the first one, we'll be talking about Married Women's Property Act of 1874. As I told you, this as high as about 144-year-old law. When I talk about businessmen generally will have two pockets. One is the personal assets pockets, one is the business assets pocket. Typically, since the slides may be a little content heavy, I'll rather use the slide for reference, and I'll speak about what this concept talk about. When I talk about two pockets of the businessman, one is the business asset, one is the personal asset. The personal assets, of course, includes all these cash, the FDs, the bungalows, the owners, the buildings, the cars, and all the automobiles they own personally in their personal capacity, and some of the investments. Of course, when it comes to business assets, they do have the stock, the inventory, the land and building, and all the assets which is owned by the company. Why I'm specifically choosing to talk about these two pockets is, you all know that a businessman, when they want to expand their personal income, they have a tendency to expand their business so that they earn more and more wealth, so that that money gets transferred into the family. So when they do that, what they typically do is, when they expand their business, they have a tendency to take a lot of credits from the financial institutions. It could be a bank or NBFCs or in some personal capacity. So when they, if at all, they take such business loans, as a matter of fact, they also will give some kind of a personal guarantee to the creditors, stating that just in case, if I'm not able to fulfill my obligation towards a business in servicing those loans, I am also giving the consent to attach my personal assets which I own. It could be my FDs, my buildings, my cash, jewelry, everything which I own, right? So, if the business loan is, to an extent, and if the business assets can service that debt, which is okay. In case they fail to fulfill those obligations in the business capacity, they're also giving that personal guarantee form. In fact, that is a very, very big thing. You will realize in the coming slides when I establish that MWPA ring fencing using some of the case studies. So when they have given the personal guarantee forms, I'm sure you agree that they have actually given the consent and to the creditors that they can attach everything which they own personally in case the business assets doesn't suffice the requirements. So these business entities go through some kind of a risk anticipated for the business. There may be a loss of business, or some business litigation can arise, and also some risk anticipated for the family also can come in, because unforeseen event and an eventuality happening to the businessman, or for that matter, a potential attachment of liquidating of all the assets which they own, and some of the family disputes that can arise because of the adversities in the business. So, when it comes to life insurance, before I go on to the case studies, probably what I'll do is, on each concept, like MWPA is about 8 to 10 minutes, then about 10 minutes on, employer-employee insurance, 10 minutes on Keyman insurance, 10 minutes on partnership insurance, and of course, we have provision for about 15 minutes on, 15 to 20 minutes, or the time permits, we can also extend that question and answers. The first thing when it comes to the human mind is, nothing will happen to me. This death, disease, accidents, or unforeseen events, we all think that this can't happen to me. We all think that, okay, all this death and disease can happen to my neighbor only, but not for me. Irony is that even the neighbor is thinking that it cannot happen to me, but it can happen to my neighbor, right? So if someone asks me, is life insurance important, whether it's an individual capacity or at the business front, many people think that, okay, if nothing happens, the entire money what we paid goes as an expense and it may not be recoverable. Always, I would like to start off with that, statement that life insurance is like a parachute. Well, none of us know whether we need it or not. I would like to use an analogy here. Life insurance is like a parachute. None of us know whether we need it or not. It is better we have one, because if you really need it, and if you don't have it, you will not need it again. That's the irony of this, because the product is such that you'll not really get it when the need becomes a want. The need always exists for everybody, whether it's a businessman or for an individual. Why I told that is, Many times when we propose a life insurance, even for the HNIs or for salaried people, business, everybody, when we propose, they have a tendency to procrastinate, thinking that nothing can happen to me. And if at all the situation comes wherein they want the 2 or 3 or 5 crores of life insurance, for example, somebody who has undergone a bypass surgery last month will love to have 5 crores of life cover, but can you give them? No. The need existed, but they didn't take. But the need became a want now. Unfortunately, the irony is that you can't give the product now. Somebody who is suffering from cancer now wants 5 crores cover, but you can't give them. That's why I keep saying, friends, the life insurance is like a parachute. None of us know whether we need it or not, but better we have one, because if you really need it and if you don't have it, you'll not need it again. With that in mind, this can't happen to me is what many of our business, friends and colleagues and many of the business tycoons have experienced. But let's see in the case studies how they could have ring-fenced. I'm just taking through a case study number 1. This is, you're seeing on the screen, a case study of a Bird Airlines. For obvious reasons, I cannot mention the name of the company on the slide, so you all can imagine which is the airline I'm talking about. This is one of the airline in the aviation industry, one of the airlines. We have intentionally put it as a Bird Airlines, and you can imagine what airlines I'm talking about. This company had both, this promoter of this company had both, of course, personal assets and please remember the 2-pocket theory. The personal assets they had and the business assets. In the quest of expanding their personal wealth, they have a tendency to expand their businesses. And when they expand their business, they have taken almost a loan to the tune of almost 7,500 crores. However, because there was a business adversity and there was a default that happened, and that the directors in the individual capacity have given a personal guarantee form. That is nothing but they have given a consent to the creditors. In case my business assets doesn't suffice to meet your requirements, you can also attach my personal assets. So with this, the businessman is exposed to the risk of even whatever created, the wealth which is created for the family, that also can be attached. And you saw that in this case of this Bird Airlines, their famous villas in the Goa and various other parts of the world got attached, and some of the most expensive fleet of cars which they owned also got attached to service that loan. So this is one of such case studies. Like this, we'll go to the next case study. This is, you're seeing one of the most popular travels in Mumbai. You can see there is a suicide note given by the owner. On the date, on the unfortunate date, the person is nothing but the owner of the Taj Travels, which owned a fleet of tourism and travel fleet of cars. And in that, to expand their business, they raised almost about 40 crores of loans so that they can have more of inventories of fleet of cars. At the same time, in order to give the guarantee to the creditor, they also have attached their personal properties. So because of competition and various unforeseen events, there was a business default. This gentleman, the owner of the car fleet, Taj Travels, ended up his life leaving this suicide note, which clearly writes, "I'm ending my life as I failed to fulfill my commitments, for which I'm solely and alone responsible for it." And he just stopped his car on the sea link of Mumbai, just jumped into the sea. So what is that? In both the things, you understood one thing: the business loan can be there. At the same time, if you have given a personal guarantee form, you're also giving a consent that you can attach their personal side in case the business assets doesn't suffice. Case number 3, so that I'll establish this, then we'll move on to the next topic. Badshah in red, because I've taken various sectors. One is the car fleet, and one is the aviation sector, one is a Bollywood as a thing. The angry young man of Indian Bollywood, you all know. I don't have to talk about this gentleman anymore. This gentleman ran a company called ABCL, you all know that. And there was some events like as big as Miss World contest, the beauty pageant contest was hosted by that company, organized by that company. For some reasons, that company went into debt, and for the loans which they had to raise, they had also given personal assets like the bungalows which they owned in Juhu and Andheri. So what happened? Because that company, which what I talked about, because that business assets could not fulfill those requirements, there was a lien on the property, and that also could be attached. So you saw this, and the last case which I want to talk about is about the famous Chopra. Again, the filmmakers in the Bollywood. You all know that they owned one of the very famous 2 twin bungalows in Tar at Mumbai, and that's a very family house. That RR Films. You know that during film production, they require a lot of capital. And for one of the big projects which they had to take on, they had raised a lot of capital. And because of the business that could not fulfill those requirements, eventually, and unfortunately, they had to attach the personal family business, so family bungalows which they owned, and it was held by the brothers, and that had to be attached. While all the four cases, you have seen two from Bollywood, one from fleet owner, and one from the aviation industry, there are lots of such cases. If you look at this, there is one thing in common. More such cases where families' assets have been attached to recovered debts. You saw these cases, these case studies which I just saw, and I can go on. There are a lot of cases like this. Now, the point I'm trying to make here is these loans, loan defaults, business failures, property attachments, and legal complications are very common for the entrepreneurs, the senior management professionals, and some of the business families and business owners, and to an extent, very high net worth individuals. So these are common. So what can be done? This is the case studies you saw. What could have, see, look at the thing here. In the entire scheme of things, the businessmen wanted to expand their personal wealth, so wanted to expand business so that they create more personal wealth. However, because of some costly moves, what happened? For some reason, there's an eventuality of the key person there, or there was a default on the business for various change in the business environment. The family's assets also were attached to the lien. What is the mistake of the wife and the children? Right? They had to face this because everything got attached. So look at this. What is there a solution for these kind of business adversities? And is there any law? Is there any concept that can come to the rescue of these entrepreneurs who take those bold steps and moves, at the same time ring-fence their personal wealth? So, ladies and gentlemen, introducing you to this concept called Married Women's Properties Act of 1874. I'll just take you through the law as such, what it says. Okay, now you'll realize, is the risk limited to the business, or does the family assume it involuntarily without their knowledge? Because they would have given personal guarantee form thinking that it's just one of the documents that is required to get the loan. But in a way, they are exposing themselves to the risk. So there is a legal way. There is a legal way of ring-fencing personal or family wealth from the business acts. This is the act called MWP Act. Probably this may look a little technical. I'll make it easy for you because some of the words which are chosen are directly from the books. So I'll make it and put it in a very, very simple terms. So MWPA Act is one such act. It's Act of 1874. This is one of the cheapest and the low cost way of creating a trust. Okay. And this is a tool. How does it work? Any married man under Section 6 of the Married Women Property Act can take a life insurance policy, and at the face of it mentions that this policy will be endorsed under a scheme, under an act called MWP Act of 1874. Then what happens? There's a trust which is automatically created. When it's actually not trust created, it is deemed to have created a trust, wherein the beneficiaries of this trust will only be wife or children, or wife and children. So 2-3 points are very clear here. Any married man can take this plan, and at the face of it, they have to get it endorsed. What do you mean by at the face of it? At the time of taking a life insurance policy, it may be for a 10 crore cover, 100 crore cover, 50 crores cover, whatever it is, they endorse it. That means they get it chapa, they get it sealed under the MWPA. So it is deemed to have created a trust. The trustee will be the wife or anybody whom he believes to, and beneficiaries can only be wife and children, or wife or children. So that's the way the trust gets created. You will appreciate what are the ring fencing mechanism. So who can initiate this? Any married man can initiate this. Who can be the beneficiary? As I told you, only wife or only children, or wife and children combination can be the beneficiaries. And also the point is that once the beneficiary is put in there, even the creator of the trust cannot change the beneficiary. That's the beauty here. They can change the trustee, but they cannot change the beneficiaries. So that's the way it gets ring fenced. So you'll see the end benefit, what will happen. If at all, if there is any MWPA which is initiated, in case of a business which I told already, The businessman would have taken some business loans. God forbid, there is a default in the business or an eventuality for this gentleman. They can attach the business of assets, of course. They can attach anything which they own personally. Like as I told you, the FD, the cash, the land, the building, the jewelry, everything. But what it cannot attach is the proceeds from this life insurance plan. The proceeds from this life insurance plan cannot be attached by the creditors, and the court of law doesn't give that permission because this is coming as an encumbrance free. The intended beneficiaries, which I told you, the wife and children, will enjoy encumbrance free, and they cannot, the creditors cannot liquidate the asset. Because, can you see that first point very clearly, second point very clearly mentions, once the policy is endorsed under MWPA, it is not a part of the estate of this married man. Because it is not a part of that, the estate of this person. The beneficiaries are the owners going forward. Only the wife and children will have the full encumbrance-free rights on that policy proceeds. Now, when I told you this MWPA, you must have by now understood that any married man taking a business loan, they can also take it. I mean, need not be a business loan. It can be a salaried person. I can take it. Anybody of you can take it. Only thing is we have to just, that creation of trust is so simple. How do I initiate? It may appear a lot of legal technicalities. There's nothing like that. Any insurance application which any married man takes, there is also one more form which is called an addendum form. That is called MWPA addendum form. If the person signs that addendum form, say that actually completes the responsibility of the person, the proposer, saying that I want to attach this policy under MWPA. So automatically in the back end, insurance companies will get it endorsed under the seal of MWPA. So, as you know that old insurance policies cannot be attached. That's why I told at the face of it. That means a person taking the insurance policy at the time of the proposal itself has to endorse this along with the basic application form and all other KYC documents. They will also attach this MWPA addendum and the trust gets created. Right? So, as I told you, typical investments in liquidation, I mean, they can attach everything which I told you, the two-pocket theory, the personal asset and the business asset, all the personal asset, mutual fund, stock, fixed deposit, cash, gold, everything can be attached. And even a life insurance plan can be attached if it is not endorsed under MWPA. What this law provides security is, this life insurance plan which is endorsed under MWPA, that cannot be attached. And that is free from any encumbrance. And that money will go for the intended beneficiaries in the encumbrance-free way. That is only to wife and children. So MWPA, it's not as recent as today. It has withstood a test of times because you will be noticing, and you can also do some Google searching on that. We can send some content also on this. So proceeds from MWPA covered life insurance policies have never been attached to recover any mistake of a businessman in the history. And you will appreciate this slide. It has really stood the test of the times for the last, in fact, 144 years. We have various case studies. This can be, this screenshot can be shared with you. You can just Google it in the court of law, what has been the, the verdict. These are some of the 6-7 cases which I mentioned. So these are the instances where MWPA has helped in ring fencing the personal assets, despite the creditors going to the court of law saying that the business loan has been a default and we have taken personal guarantee form. So we want to attach their personal assets. Yes, court has given rights to attach anything, but not the policies which are endorsed under MWPA. That's the power of MWPA. And as I told you, there is zero cost. There is zero cost for getting that any insurance policy under MWPA. Just one simple checklist along with whatever your given documents like your age proof, address proof, and all the income proof. You have to just give one more signature along with the basic application saying that I want this policy to be attached under MWPA. That's it. So that's on MWPA. Just to summarize, there are 4 scenarios that can happen for an entrepreneur's life. One is what? When I expand my business, there are 4 scenarios that can happen. One is my life will be there. That means I'll be alive. There's no question of death, and there is no default. I am a businessman, very calculated. So there is no default that can happen in business. Then also this policy will help because in which case the money, the beneficiaries are wife and children. And if there is a life, that means the person is alive, but there's a default in the business that has happened. So wealth created cannot be attached. So it helps in securing the goals of the family, right? So life without default and with default. We have taken this classification. Other two scenarios that can happen is when a person takes this MWPA, the life insurance policy, and take it on MWPA. Let's say the death eventuality happens with a default in the business. Then also death benefit will go only to the wife and children, so that family is ring fenced. And death with default, then also the family members only get. So in a nutshell, any businessman we advise without any extra cost, they endorse the policy under MWPA. So MWPA is a clear winner, whether it's a death or a default, or with life or without life. So with that, I will also move on to the next topic called Keyman Insurance. Yeah, we'll take just 10 seconds pause so that we organize those thoughts on MWPA. Then I'll quickly get into the Keyman Insurance. All right. So Keyman Insurance is, you all know that there are some key personnel. Before I go on to the slide, I'll just put the the context in terms of how this works. You all know that in any organization, especially in a joint stock, it's a limited companies. The limited company, it could be a private limited company or a public limited company. There are some key personnel in the organizations. There may be one or two or few key personnel in the organization, and these key personnel of the they're called key personnel of the organization because of their existence and their service to the organization, there is a huge impact on the profitability of the organization. God forbid, if an eventuality of this key man or key men, if an eventuality happened to this key personnel, it could be the marketing director, it could be the CEO, it could be the finance director, it could be the production engineer, any person whom the company feels they are very critical in the functioning of the smooth functioning of the organization, and eventuality of theirs will have an impact on the profitability of the organization. So this is an insurance taken by an organization on those key personnel. So what is the benefit? What is the purpose? So if any organization takes a Keyman Insurance on the life of one or few key personnel, if at all an eventuality happens to them, you all know that there is an impact on the profitability of the firm, because their expertise, their know-how will take some time for somebody to come and replace. So in order to compensate that loss, Keyman Insurance is proposed. So Keyman Insurance in a nutshell, taken by any organization, it's typically a private limited or a public limited company. It has to be a limited company, and they take it on the life of some of the key personnel, and the company proposes on their life. The objective is, in case of an eventuality of that key person, there is an economic loss suffered by the organization, and to compensate that loss, this Keyman Insurance will come in handy. So with that, I will move on to the some of the contents here. We'll discuss in detail. So as I told you, the proposer in this plan is the employer, the organization. The company is the proposer. The owner of the plan is the employer, and the life assured is the key employee that is mentioned in the board resolution. Okay, the benefit in this, even if the eventuality happens, the benefit will go to the employer. This is one very important point we have to note here. In a Keyman Insurance, the end beneficiary has to be the organization, the employer of the firm. The objective is not to give a protection to or to create wealth for the family members of the Keyman. That is not the objective here. You all know that there is a Keyman who is contributing significantly to the organization's profitability. If there is an eventuality to this Keyman, there is a economic loss that is experienced by the organization. As a compensation to the loss, the amount from the life insurance company will be paid out to the employer. That means the money will come to the employer, not to the family members of the employee. So the Keyman here can be an employee having a special skill set, anyone, as I already mentioned, who significantly contributes to the profits of the organization. And without making any gender bias here, the Keyman can also be a key woman, and it can be more than one person in the organization. All right. So this is the key person, and the board gives who all are the key persons. So now coming to some of the typical questions. Of course, we have provisioned some time for question and answers, but I'll also take up some of the questions. You all understood that, okay, in a keyman, this person are the, what happens if the keyman quits and join another company? First of all, as you know that the key person was a keyman in this organization and the proposer was the owner of the company policy. Proposer is the owner of the policy. So the employer is the owner of the policy, not the employee. So first of all, if the company, that is the employer, can stop paying all the premiums and allow the policy to lapse, because till that time, the person was employed in that organization. Company has paid the premium on behalf of the keyman, and the company has enjoyed the tax benefit under section 37, subsection 1 as an admissible business expense, which I will cover in the coming slides. Secondly, if at all the company want to, transfer this policy, to the new employer where the keyman is going, between mutual understanding between these two companies, they can take that call and it can be transferred. The last possibility, or one of the option which many organizations exercise, is that it will be assigned in the favor of the life assured. For example, this ABC Limited company have taken on one of the gentlemen, let's say by name Ramesh, and he's the key personnel, and this gentleman is quitting the organization for some reason. The organization ABC Limited can transfer, that means the title of the policy by virtue of assignment gets transferred from the company to the individual. So that becomes the individual policy for the employee. And if at all he or she wishes to continue, they can continue to pay the premium in future and enjoy the benefits. That's the possibility. Some of the conditions, these are very, very important for a company to be eligible to take a keyman insurance. The first of it is the key personnel. As I told you, it's a joint stock company. It should be a private limited company or a public limited company. The key person on whose name the life is insured should not be holding anything more than 51% of the company's shares. Not only that, there is one recent addition to that. This person who is insured cannot exceed more than 51%. However, the kith and kin of the family, the wife and children of this insured person, all put together also should not exceed 70%. So technically, if any person's family's net worth is more than 70% of the 70% of the company's share, they are not entitled to be called as a keyman. So any other employee can be proposed by the owners of the company or the company per se as a key personnel, not that person, because he or she is breaching the 51% individually and 70% as a family business. Of course, some proof need to be established to say that, okay, he holds the critical role in the organization. That's one thing. This is the most important slide if you ask me. What's the maximum sum assured an organization can propose on keyman insurance? There are three criteria, underwriting and the reinsurers will assess when they want to give the cover to the key personnel. First is 10 times of the annual compensation package of the director. For example, in a particular company, if the director or the marketing director, the finance director or the production engineer, if they are the keymen proposed by the board, then we will look at the annual compensation of that particular director or that employee. It cannot exceed 10 times of it. That's one of the criteria. Second thing we look at is 3 times of the average gross profit in the last 3 years the company has declared, and 5 times of the average net profit in the last 3 years. So the least of the three is the eligibility for an employee to be considered as a keyman and for the firm to get the keyman insurance as a maximum sum assured limit. So one more point, as a matter of fact, all of you know that the purpose of taking a keyman insurance is, some person who is some key people play a very significant role, and in case of such an eventuality for that particular individual, there is a significant economic loss to that, there is absence of profit or loss of income for that firm. As a compensation for the loss, the keyman is proposed. Hence, as a matter of fact, as an underlying principle, keyman insurance will not be given to any company which are basically sick by nature. That means they're not profitable by nature, because that will put unnecessary moral hazard on the life of the employee. So loss-making companies cannot be buying a Cayman insurance. So coming to what type of policies can be given, pure term plan, nothing else, because you all know that in life insurance there are three variants of insurance policies. One is called a term plan, one is called a endowment savings plan, one is called a unit link plans. When it comes to Cayman, at least it's very clear, the law is very clearly establishing the fact that the objective is only to replace the economic loss. So only term plan variant can be given for Cayman insurance. And the owner, if the proposer of the policy is the company, obviously the beneficiary is also the company. So the company is the proposer and the owner of the policy, and the beneficiary is also the company. I will just skip through this documentation. What we look at is, as I told you, 10 times of the annual compensation of the Cayman is important. So we collect the 3 years ITR of the individual, and we look at the KYC documents of the individual, and documents from the proposer, that is from the organization. We look at all the memorandum of association, articles of association. We look at the audited reports and the balance sheet and the KYC of the company. So there is a lot of benefit for the company. It immediately, one is the tax benefit, which we all know that if there is a premium paid, let's say 5 lakh rupees as an insurance premium paid by the organization on the life of the employee, that is Cayman, that 5 lakhs of premium paid can be taken as business expense under section 37 subsection 1. So it is allowed as a business expense and all admissible business expense. So in that case, the company is getting some tax benefits, because that will reduce the tax liability of the firm, and it of course protects the company's valuation and helps in creating keeping the market share stable in case of death of a Cayman, because there will be some disturbance in the financials, and this money will come into the accounts of the company. That may to an extent stabilize. So coming to the taxation part, though we have provision for the things, I'll just run it. Any proceeds of a Cayman insurance are completely taxable. It is treated as a business expense. Hence, section 37 is allowed. At the same time, when the money comes in to the company, because the demise of a key person, that is considered in lieu of other profits. So it is also treated as income from other sources. So it is not an exemption. It will be considered as income to the firm. So this is in detail. As I told you, in the hands of the company, premium paid can be section 37(1), can be taken as business expense. And in case there is a claim that is happening, the claim proceeds is coming as business income in the hands of the company. Of course, one point you need to think is, because all the senior directors and all, when their compensation are heavy, they'll be concerned, what if the company pays premium on my life? Will it be taken as perquisite in my accounts? And the answer is no, because the purpose of taking this is for the benefit of the company, not for the individual. Hence, it will not get added as a perquisite under section 17, chapter 2 of Income Tax Act. So Cayman is not required to pay any tax because the company paid the premium on his name or her name. However, if there is a assignment that has happened by the company in the individual name, because this person has moved on, yes, there is a demise that can happen and the money will come to the individual. That also is taxable in the hands of the employee's legal heirs, because this is a Cayman insurance. There is no section 1010D. That means there is no tax-free benefits in the Cayman insurance, even if it is assigned in the hands of the individual. So dear colleagues, we have just now covered two components. Just to have a quick wrap up, one is a Married Women Property Act of 1874. The objective of that is to ring fence the personal wealth which the businessman has created with a lot of hard work and a lot of vision and aspirations for the family. So the family gets the encumbrance-free asset which cannot be attached by a court of law or anybody towards the business loans they have taken. That's the ring fencing that can happen. And next we covered Cayman insurance. wherein it is purely taken by the organization to compensate the loss in case any eventuality happened to the key personnel proposed by the company. And business expense, it can be taken as business expense, the premiums paid, and the money received by the firm is taxable in the hands of the employee as well as the employer. So the point is only a profit-making companies can be proposed a human insurance, and other underlying principle which we saw is only a limited company, that's a private limited or a public limited company can take this. And most important thing is all put together cannot be more than 70, all the family members put together cannot be more than 70% stakes in the business. Now we are entering into the most talked about kind of an insurance concept. It is not, there is nothing called as employer-employee insurance scheme. It's a concept rather. That's why I've clearly articulated in this slide, employer-employee insurance. You all know that in an organization, there'll be different hierarchies. There may be employees, there may be directors, there may be staff, there may be admin staff, anybody. The beauty of this employer-employee or insurance concept is such that in an organization it can be multiple employees, that may be hundreds and thousands of employees. However, the company can choose to give this employer-employee insurance to a very select band of employees. Out of 10,000, they may choose to give it for only 2-3 people, or 4 or 5 people, or only one person. Unlike a group insurance, because many of them get confused this with group insurance. In a group insurance, it's typically the company buys insurance for all its employees, irrespective of the grade. Everyone will be a part of it. By virtue of they being on the payrolls of that particular organization, everyone gets covered. Of course, based on the grade and the vintage and the cadre, the coverage will vary. But everyone in the master policy document very clearly established that, okay, till the time the person is serving the organization, if there's an eventuality, the insurance company will pay some money to the family members. Whereas in employer-employee, that's completely different. While the beneficiary in a human insurance is the organization, here the end beneficiary of this employer-employee insurance is the family members of the employee. So in a nutshell, before I go on to employer-employee in its detail, the end beneficiary in a human is the organization. The end beneficiary in an employer-employee insurance is mostly the employee or the employee's family members, if there is an eventuality. So with that, I'll take you through the employer-employee insurance. First of all, the law recognizes that there is an insurable interest. Under section 2, the law recognizes employer has an insurable interest on the life of its employee. That means employer can propose an insurance on the life of its employee. Right? So this can be used as a welfare mechanism or a welfare measure by an employer. And at the same time, insurance policy can work as a reward program for its employees. I'll just take you to the construct and we will take all the questions arising in a while from now. It may be a little clumsy and content heavy. I'll just brief you what it talks about. Who are eligible? This is a very, very important thing because many of the times, in the last 17 years of my association with, ICICI Prudential, we have done a lot of cases in an employer-employee. However, sometimes we have to really cut a sorry figure to some of our business clients saying that, sir, because of this clause, we will not be able to give you an employer-employee. So just to, give you that perspective, who cannot be, first of all, who are all eligible and who are all not eligible? As I told you, any private limited or public limited can take cover on its employees or the directors can take it. The point here is the sole proprietor. If the form of the organization is a proprietorship, the sole proprietor can take employer-employee insurance on anybody's life other than the proprietor because he's a business owner. He's not the employee. Similarly, a partnership firm can take an employer-employee insurance on the life of its employees. It could be a clerk, it could be an officer, it could be a manager, it could be a very senior person in the organization. However, the partners themselves cannot be called as an employees because they are the business owners. They are not the employees of the firm. Though they take salary, that doesn't mean that, okay, they're employees. So the scope of employer-employee is not for a sole proprietor in an organization which is for sole proprietorship. It is not a partnership firm. It is not for partners in a partnership firm. And in case of trust, yes, if it is very clearly mentioned that trust deed, that it is allowed, then it can be established. So in a nutshell, proprietors and partners is not allowed in there as a employer-employee. Now, just to give you some of the, the construct of this in an employer-employee insurance, the proposer is the employer, the organization is a proposer of the policy. The payer, the money premium paid is by the employer, and they can claim section 37(1) because you've seen that the insurance premiums paid by the employer on the life of its employee can be claimed as an admissible business expense under section 37 subsection 1. The owner is still, because the proposer is the company, so owner is the employer. Only the life to be assured is an employee here. And as I already told, the last sentence which already talked about, employer has an insurable interest under section 2 subsection 1 of the Insurance Act of 1938. It says employer has an insurable interest on the life of the employee. So the working, I'll just take you to the working, and this probably the next slide will summarize. How does this work? Any organization, which is, as I told you, it could be a partnership, it could be a private limited, public limited, any of this. However, in some of the limitations you saw, the employer pays the premium. So this is a scenario or an example wherein I've taken the policy term as 10 years and the premium payable is for 7 years. Consider 10 lakh rupees is the annual premium paid by the company on the life of its one of the employee or a combination of employees. The premium paid by the company, and it can be shown that 10 lakh rupees gets as admissible business expense. So if the profit of that company is 1 crore, this 10 lakhs will become an expense. So the net profit becomes 90 lakhs. That will reduce the tax liability of the company to that extent that year. And the ownership, as I told you, is with the policy owner, because the ownership is still not transferred to the employee. So proposer is the owner is the company. And maturity proceeds will come to the employee to their account. And of course, now there is no dividend distribution tax. Otherwise, this was one of the very important tool where the company could have transferred their business money into their personal account. If at all the private limited company, wherein the family members are the directors of the organization, so they would have avoided the dividend distribution tax and they could have transferred. Now there is nothing like that. So the construct, as I told you, the employer pays the premium, employee is just a life assured here, and all the premiums paid, company can take the section 37(1) benefit. And at the end of maturity, look at the flow here. At the end of maturity, the money will come to the policy can be assigned in the name of the employee, and the employee receives the entire money, and of course that is taxable. The ownership of the policy is with the employer. So look at the benefits to the employer. There's an immediate tax deferment. Of course, in future date, the employee has to pay the tax on the proceeds because it's not an individual policy. However, any businessman will want to defer the tax, because you saw this example, 10 lakh rupees every year paid by if the tax rates are at about 25%. So every year 10 lakh rupees paid on the life insurance, 2.5 lakhs is the tax saved for that year. So that 2.5 lakhs is anyway saved for that year, and over a period of 8-10 years, the company keeps on saving the 2.5, 3 lakhs kind of an amount. And money saved is money earned. That money can be deployed in any other part of the business, and they could have made provision. Of course, at the end of maturity, they have to pay tax. So I'm not saying it's a tax saving; it's a tax deferment, right? So that's one of the biggest benefit. Look at the benefits here. Immediate tax benefits, as I told you. Dividend distribution tax savings, now it is not applicable. Liquidity available from the third year itself. In fact, now with the recent laws, it is coming from the second year. Many organizations would not want to block their 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs kind of a capital. So what they have done, what we have also facilitated is, there is a liquidity. You pay first, second premium. By paying the third premium, but third premium onwards, these are all traditional insurance plans that will give you a facility of loan. That means if you have paid 10 lakhs and 10 lakhs 2 years, third year, the 10 lakhs which you are going to raise need not be funded from the bank account of the company. the third 10 lakh rupees can be availed as a loan from the insurance policy, and it's a low cost liquidity, I must say, because liquidity for any businessman is one of the most important thing to meet their working capital requirements. And why I told it is low cost liquidity, the interest rates are less than your OD facility. It will be 1.5% plus the GSEC rate. The GSEC rate may be hovering around 7.5%, 8% now, plus 1.5%. So 9.5% is the rate at which you get the business loan, which is one of the lowest cost. And another advantage is the interest which you pay towards the loan on this policy also can be claimed under section 37 subsection 1 as a business expense. And it can be used as a employee retention, or because there is a there can be a carrot, there can be a motivation for the employee, telling that if you stay in my organization for a longer period like this, the policy which I have taken on your name, I may choose to transfer in your name, provided you meet certain requirements. And it can be a loyalty benefit to cover the life of the employee, because many people feel very privileged to be chosen as a few people for the select band of employee, that okay, employer is contributing some money for my long-term benefits. This is the in the nutshell. Of course, for an employee, there's a building of corpus that can happen, and financial security through risk management. And you know that in any organization, there will be some kind of a arrangement wherein if an employee dies, there will be some compensation given to the employee's family. This policy can come in handy during those times. So, treatment of tax, of course, there are some questions which will come up, but I thought I'll put it across in the slide. Treatment of money at various stages. As I told you, the premium paid by the organization is definitely taken as an admissible business expense under section 37(1), and all receipts under employer-employee in the hands of the employer will be treated as business income. That means if at all a policy matures, and if at all a death claim comes, anything that comes to the employer, the money is a taxable income under treated as a business income under section 28, chapter 6. And also for that matter, the money can come to the employer in various situations. One is a death claim. Before assignment, if the death has happened, the money will come to the firm, or the money's maturity benefit can also come to the firm. And if there is any withdrawal facility like partial withdrawal or a complete surrender of the policy, any money can come to the organization. This is the most important slide according to me when it comes to taxation. There are two scenarios in an employer-employee. One is the ownership is retained by the employer. The two scenarios could be, one is I transfer the title to the employee, and in other case, I have not transferred the title to the employee. Look at the two scenarios here. If there is a death scenario, I have taken an example of employee dies in the 6th year. The policy is still not assigned to the employee. So the owner is still the employer only, not the employee. Then the company receives the death money, and it is received as a business income. It is taxed, of course, in the hands of the employer. However, that taxability can be negated if the company gives this money to the family members of the deceased, and this can be made as an ex gratia payment in the same financial year. Then the legal heirs will receive the money, and the money is tax-free for the receiver. The widow or the family members of the employee who receives the money is completely tax-free, because the policy is still not assigned. Look at the scenario number 2, right side. If the employer assigns the policy, that means the title of the policy is already transferred to the employee from the company. That means the owner of the company, owner of the policy now is the employee. And after that, whether on survival or on death, the spouse who receives the money, the policy is not entitled for a section 1010D benefits. There is something called a section 56, chapter 6. In that, because it's an employer-employee and a human insurance, any proceeds coming, after an assignment is taxable in the hands of the recipient. So only one scenario where the money becomes tax-free to the legal heirs of the family is a situation where the policy is still not assigned and the person dies. The money will come to the firm, and the firm will make it as an ex gratia payment, and that money received by the family members are tax-free under section 10, subsection 1010D. Of course, in the event of maturity, because we just discussed about eventuality benefit, the other possibility could be the policy being matured. If the employee leaves the organization before maturity, the maturity will come to the business. So that will be treated as income in that particular financial year, profits under section 28, chapter 6 for the financial year. Of course, if the policy is assigned to the policy holder after the assignment, the money which is received by the employee is also taxable because it is treated as profits in lieu of salary in the hands of the employee, and that is taxable. There are typical questions, sometimes the employee may leave the organization and go. Yes, employer can choose to surrender the plan and get the money, and that will be treated as business income. And if they have assigned it to the policy to the employee, then that will become a benefit to the employee, so that the policy, the surrender benefits of the product will become the profits in lieu of the salary which I just mentioned, and they'll be taxable. So in employer-employee, this is very important. You can give all types of plans. You can give a protection plan. You can give a traditional plan. You can give a unit-linked plan. Only thing is, all the children's education plan and retirement pension plans and money-back plans are not allowed in this plan. In a MWPA, you can give all of them: protection, traditional, and ULIP. In a Keyman insurance, only term plan and protection plan. That's it. Only protection plans. There is no savings plan can be given. Whereas in employer-employee, all the variants can be given, except your money back and children's education plan. So documents typical to any business, we take the KYC of the employee and the KYC of the firm, like ITR and photo, bank statement and all. The last leg of today's discussion, we learned about MWPA, we learned about the objective of it, we learned about employer-employee insurance, we learned about the objective of it, we learned about Keyman insurance, and we know the objective of it, and what kind of plans, and what are the limitations, and what are the taxability part of it. Now moving on to the last leg, which is called a partnership insurance. In fact, one very typical partnership insurance is actually like a Keyman insurance. It's actually a Keyman insurance. Whereas I told you, in a Keyman insurance, it can be taken only by a limited company. It could be a private limited or a public limited company. Whereas partnership insurance is like a Keyman insurance for the partnership firm. I will, there is something very important called buy-sell agreement. This is some of the very commonly used among the business communities. Buy-sell agreement. I'll just put some perspective, one or two, sentences on this, one or two, key points on this partnership insurance. Then I'll take it to the slides. Technically, this will take the least amount of time. This will take about just 3-4 minutes to conclude partnership insurance, because you already know the benefits of joint, Keyman insurance and employer-employee insurance. In any, partnership firm, there may be partners, say 2, 3, 4 partners that may be there. Partnership insurance also is one such arrangement where the partnership firm proposes, that means it's a firm in the capacity of a legal entity, proposes insurance on the partners of the organization, of the firm. Whereas you just saw some time back, employer-employee cannot be given in a partnership firm for the partners because they are the business owners. So partnership insurance is one such scheme where the organization can propose on the partners themselves. But what is the limitation? Only term plan. So this is a very important point. Only a protection plan, a term plan can be given on the partner's life. Because the objective is not to create wealth or to create savings. The objective is, God forbid, if an eventuality happened to the partner, then the surviving partners will have a huge liability. They have to arrange from the business to buy out the stake from the family members of the deceased partner. For example, if 2 partners are there technically, and assume that both are 50-50% partner, one of them dies, technically the firm dissolves and it becomes a sole proprietor, because the partnership may, in the deed, one of the partner is not there, the firm has to dissolve. However, the surviving partner has to run the business. If the surviving partner want to buy out the stake of the family member, that's a huge money required. That huge money required cannot be pulled out of the business because it will affect the working capital and the other financials of the company. Hence, partnership insurance is those insurance policies taken by the partnership firm on the life of the partners. The objective is, God forbid, if one of the partner dies, then the money will come to the firm as a replacement of as an economic loss that has happened. That lump sum money will be used by the firm in order to buy out the stake from the deceased partner's family. Why such an agreement? That's why it's called buy-sell agreement. Why such an arrangement is required? The family members of the deceased partner can always join the business and take over. But there are some challenges in that. What is the challenge? There may be competency issues. Suppose me and my best friend are the two partners. We have been running this business for last 30 years. We have a good faith and understanding, and both of us contribute in the business dynamics and business situations. It may be capital, it could be know-how, it could be everything, intelligence, everything. But if one partner dies, their family members may not be competent enough to participate in the business. They just enjoy the benefits of the business with my effort. That should not happen. That's why I may want to dissolve this partnership firm. I will use that compensation money from the insurance to buy out the stake. That's a competency issue. Second situation could be compatibility issue. Of course, me and my friend had a fantastic last 30 years of understanding. There is a good compatibility. But the same compatibility may not be possible with their kith and kin. So I may rather want to discontinue. I want to buy. That's why it's called buy-sell agreement. This is an agreement many partners get into at the time of getting into partnership firm. They say, God forbid, if an eventuality happened to one of the partner, and the other surviving partner can do have a right to dissolve this partnership firm, and they can buy out the stake. They are not obligated to continue if the competency or the compatibility issue comes. So just you've understood the purpose of this. As I told you, in case of a death of one or two more partners, the remaining partner is obliged to pay the capital to compensate the deceased partner's stake. So partnership insurance is those insurance only term plans can be given, and the firm proposes the policy on all the partners. If a death of any partner, the lump sum money from the life insurance plan comes to the firm. Of course, it gets treated as income in the hands of the firm, and the premiums paid can be taken as business expense under Section 37, subsection 1. And of course, only term plan can be given. And second rule here is preferably, though I'm not saying it's mandatorily, preferably all the partners should be proposed an insurance, unless in a firm where 3-4 partners are there and one of them is not insurable because of health or whatever may be the reasons, right? Then we have to make separate provisioning. Otherwise, preferably all the partners need to be proposed insurance on this. And the cover what we give is also like a Cayman insurance. We take the financials of the company, and we look at what is the percentage of share of profits this partnership which is mentioned in the deed. This is tax benefit just in a quick snapshot. Premiums paid by the company can be taken as Section 37(1). The premium paid by the partnership are not perquisite in the hands of the partner. That's the good news. Unlike similar situation in a Cayman insurance. Cayman insurance is only a life assured. Company is paying it to protect the interest of the organization. That premium paid, say about 10 lakh rupees on my name, should not be added as income or as a perquisite, and it should not be added as tax for me. There should not be any tax liability. So the same rule applies for the partner when they calculate their individual wealth. That this taxation is not treated as perquisite. Of course, the maturity claim maturity doesn't come into picture because we give only term plan. Claim amount received by the company will be added as an income to the partnership firm in the year of receipt. Financial eligibility, like in Cayman, as I told you, 3 times of the average gross profit, 5 times of the average net profit, or 10 times of the annual income of the director is what we evaluate to give the coverage. Here also 10 times the gross annual income and we look at the 2 times average gross profit from the last 3 years of the firm and 5 times average net profit of the firm. Similar, only extra documentation is we ask for the partnership deed. Unlike in other situations we used to ask for memorandum of association, AOA and all. Here some of the documentation which I can share it with you for reference. So in a summary, this is just to summarize, we have exactly taken about 53 minutes. The summary of this is, you all know that insurance is largely perceived as an income replacement tool to cover the economic losses, not only for individual, because largely perceived for individual to compensate their family if there is an eventuality. Of late, what is really picking up is the business insurance, because insurance we call it as business insurance solutions. So insurance can be used as a tool to secure some of the business interests. One of that you saw for a businessman, MWPA, Married Women Property Act. The objective was to create a trust in such a way the beneficiaries will be wife and children, and wealth what is created will go only to these beneficiaries. And one of the lowest cost way of creating a trust, just by filling up one more form for endorsing this policy under MWPA. You saw the objective of it. The Keyman insurance, as you saw, one is definitely a tax benefit, because the premium paid by the company is under section 37(1). They can claim it as an admissible business expense, and it definitely protects the company's valuation and stabilizing the share in case of the death of the key person. It compensates the loss which an organization suffers because of the demise of some of the key personnel, which will of course impact the profitability. That's the objective in Keyman insurance, because the end beneficiary is the organization. Coming to employer-employee insurance, again the tax benefit premium paid is section 37 subsection 1. So it's one of the tax deferment. I'm not saying it's a tax saving tool, it's a tax deferment tool excised. It can be used as employee retention, saying that, okay, I will assign this policy in your benefit till the time you are in my organization. I'll keep paying the premium, and on fulfillment of certain criteria like a business target or certain vintage, I will transfer this policy in your name, and you will be the end beneficiary. You can take it after that particular point of time, and it can build a good retirement corpus for the employee, because employer is contributing, and it can be used as a loyalty to ring fence the attrition. Partnership firm, as I told you, buy-sell agreement, there's a flexibility and to ensure financial stability. So these are the 4 key aspects of business insurance we covered today: MWPA, Keyman, employer-employee, and partnership insurance. So these are the within the available 55 minutes time we could cover the introduction. I can call it as introduction to business insurance, because it's a vast subject. There are a lot of do's and don'ts and a lot of conditions that are applicable. As much as possible I've covered in these slides, and I'm now free to take any questions that is coming from you. I will share, I'll be more than happy to take these questions. Yeah. Sandeep sir, over to you now.
Yeah. So Ashish, I think you are taking the questions.
Yes, right. Yes.
Yeah.
So we can start the question answer session, and we can stop the sharing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's done. So thanks, Prashant. It was actually a very good session, very nice session, to be honest. And topics, very critical topics like MWPA or employer-employee or Keyman or the partnership insurance. These are all very nice concepts, and you could close in within 1 hour in a very smooth way. So thank you very much for that. And we all thoroughly enjoyed your session. And I guess it was so smooth that today I have very few questions from our participants.
Thanks.
So I will take one
sir.
by one though. Just a second. I will take one by one. So first question is from Mr. Venkatesh.
Okay.
It's about keyman this insurance.
Yeah.
When the keyman separates from the organization,
Yeah.
leaves from the organization,
Yeah.
can the corporate substitute him for the new person who joins them in the same position?
Okay. May I know the name of the gentleman who asked this? Mr. Venkatesh, right?
Mr. Venkatesh, yes.
Okay. Mr. Venkatesh, thanks for asking that question. It's one of the most commonly asked questions when we, present this to corporates. As you know that policy is underwritten on that particular individual name. So to answer your question straight, it is not possible. I'll tell you why. The why part of it. Answer is not possible. The reason which is not possible is you all know that insurance is a contract between a life insurance company, right, and the insured. Here, the contract is such that we have underwritten because it's a 2 crores, 3 crores, 5 crores kind of a sum assured we promise. That means if an eventuality happens to this individual, we have to pay about 5 crores or 3 crores, whatever the amount insured. Here, the person who was insured has undergone a medical examination and we know the financial, we know the health of that person. So basis that, those inputs given in the application form and basis those medical and financial underwriting, we have issued the policy. The new person who is replacing the same position in the organization may not be of the same health conditions. So technically, that cannot be transferred to the new employee who joins as an organization. So the choice for the company is, yes, so far they've enjoyed the cover benefits for the employee. Now the new person comes, the option is they can choose to terminate the plan because then is no longer a part of the organization, so that the premium paid can, anyway they've enjoyed section 37 benefit also, and during that time if there was an eventuality they would have enjoyed that cover. So all those are fine. For the new peer person, they can apply for a keyman insurance wherein the fresh underwriting starts for that particular gentleman. Did I answer you, Mr. Venkatesh? Is it satisfactory? Any further queries on the same?
Yes, I think it should be very clear.
Yeah.
So we'll go for the next question. It is from Mr. Praful Mishra.
Yeah.
This is about employer-employee.
Yeah.
I think this you already answered, but I will take this question. If employee quits before policy term or assignment,
Yeah.
can the company continue the policy and take maturity later? Say around 80% is already over.
Yeah.
So can it take maturity later, or is it compulsory for the company to surrender?
So technically speaking, when the employee resigns, he is no longer an employee of the organization, right? So he is actually out of the contract. However, if all the premiums are already paid by the employer, ideally it has to be assigned to the employee, and employee has to pay the tax, and they transfer the benefits of the plan to the employee. Or they can surrender the plan and take the benefits to the firm, and that is also taxable. In a very rare situation where, for some health reasons or some reason, if the employee has exited, the company will take it as a maturity proceeds, and that maturity proceeds will be treated as income in the hands of the employer.
Okay, that's great. Mr. Praful Mishra has one more question.
Yeah.
He has not mentioned for which insurance, but I guess it is for partnership insurance.
Okay.
So the question says, what would be eligibility, that is maximum sum insurance,
Yeah.
for startup companies, which is less than say 2 to 3 years of existence,
Okay.
but has a bright future, great prospect, and has received good fundings?
Okay. Very, very interesting question. Again, this is one of the most commonly, faced kind of a question, Kapurji. Because in one of the slides, I already mentioned what is the maximum sum assured eligibility. We show that 2 years of average net profits, 5 years of average gross profits, and all of them. But you are talking about a startup company where the financials, the papers of the company may not be available for more than 2 years, right? And it may not be available for more than 1 year also, for that matter.
Right.
So what we do is, in those cases, we take the auditor's, view as to what is the future prospects of the company. We will get it auditor certification, point number one. And also we take a declaration from the promoters of the firm. I mean, I cannot share the company name. It's very popular, and especially during lockdown, many of us get the food delivered to our house using that app. Okay, that was a startup company way back about 3 years back. They asked for 100 crores for those. It's a startup company, 100 crores for all the key partners. However, that was just started off that time. The fundings were huge, but there were no financials. What we could take as a data point is, we asked for, one is a funding statement. Second thing is expected business and whatever the orders they have it in hand, at least for the next 18 months. We take those documents in writing. For example, one of the firm which I mentioned, they didn't have any financial papers for the last 3 years, but these 3 people had a very good credibility in the market and they worked in some senior position in the company. They have come as partners here, and they have proposed only challenges. We were not able to establish what is the cover we can give, because we can't go by the gross profit and the net profit of the thing. And they were not taking heavy compensation also, because it's a startup company. The point we were able to give, of course, they were not satisfied with what we offered, but we had an agreement saying that this is what we could offer. Finally, we could give only that much. What was that we could give? It's only basis the orders they have already bagged, and orders they already have it in hand, which they could give it in declaration, saying that the revenue expected to the company, basis the projections and the orders confirmation in hand, and with that order being executed, what is the profit this company is likely to make. Basis that auditor's confirmation, we were able to give a cover. Of course, that was really not in tune with what they were expecting, but we were able to give a cover. I hope that is it. It answers.
Yes, thank you.
So projected statement from the auditor and the firm.
Correct. So I think it's all clear. The next question is from Mr. Bala.
Yeah.
Is medical applicable in employee insurance?
See, medical as a underwriting, there are 2 types of underwriting that happens when we get an application form as a proposal. One is called financial underwriting. One is called a medical underwriting. Why do we do this underwriting? For a medical underwriting, we do because we want to be sure the person on whose life we are giving insurance is medically fit. Because insurance is what? A risk management tool. The possibility of an event, that is a death, may or may not should be applicable. Here, if the person's health is certainly not in favor, we will not want to give an insurance on that person, because it's a definite loss to the company. So one is medical, is not mandate, by the way. What is the basis on which we choose to say whether it's a medical or a non-medical is based on the age of the person. For example, in an employer-employee, if the age of the person is as low as, let's say, 45, 48, and the cover they're asking for is about, say, 2 crores, it can be given as a no medical, because the risk what we are taking on a age of the person is just 45, and 2 crores is anyway the cover which is very much acceptable. We have certain guidelines. So to answer his question, medical is not mandatory in all the cases. Medicals get triggered only on 2 scenarios: if the age of the person is high or the sum assured they're asking for is high.
Perfect. Well said. I can see few of our participants have raised their hand. So I will request them to put their question in the chat box so that I can ask your questions.
Yeah.
And moving out on the next question from Mr. Rajesh K. Request you to share some light on point 1.
Yeah.
Life insurance taken on borrower by lender. And point 2, life insurance taken on borrower by borrow and assigned to the lender.
Okay. I understood what he's trying to ask. Correct me if my understanding is wrong. May I know the participant's name? Sorry.
Mr. Rajesh K.
So Rajesh, feel free to clarify in case my understanding is wrong. What I understood is, if there is a debtor and a creditor relationship, can a creditor take insurance on the life of the debtor? Okay,
Right.
we just established this fact. There are only 3 or 4 relationships on, there is an insurable interest that comes. A person can take insurance on their own name. That means I can be a proposer, I can be a life assured. So I can propose. I can propose an insurance on my spouse name, because there's an insurable interest on my spouse for me. In case if something happens to her, there is definitely emotional loss and an economic loss, so I can take it. The third relationship is parents and children. Parents can take life insurance on the life of the children because, God forbid, if something happened to the children, there is not only an emotional loss, there is an economic loss because they may be dependent on me. So there's an income replacement that need to be done. So that is allowed. The fourth relationship, which I told you, is employer-employee. Employer can take policy on the life of the employee because if an employee, something happens, it's not an emotional loss, it's an economic loss because the contribution from the employee is affected, hence impacts my profitability, so I can propose. The last one, which you are asking, can a creditor take insurance policy on the life of the employee, sorry, debtor? Yes, it can be insured because there is a insurable interest, creditor and debtor, only to an extent of the credit given.
So the part 2 of the question is, life insurance taken on borrower by borrower himself and then assigned to the lender.
It is possible. It is possible. Typically it happens. In a banks, many banks, when you take a home loan, they give you something called as mortgage reducing term assurance. It is called MRTA. I take a home loan for, let's say, 1 crore or 2 crores, and there is a lender called ICICI Bank or somebody was lent me, and I pay the premium for it, and I assign the policy to the lender, that is the bank here, stating that if I demise before paying all my EMIs, okay, let's say the cover is 2 crores, and I've paid only about 1.3 crores. 1.3 crores of loan, and loan is also 2 crores, and I've taken a loan of 2 crores. Now what will happen is, on my demise, 1.3 crores will not go to my family. 1.3 crores will go to the outstanding loan. Remaining 70 lakhs will go to my family. Did I answer you, sir? So it is possible. Creditor can insist on an assignment. In fact, not can, it will be insisted by the lenders.
Rajesh bhai, it's clear now?
Thank you, Prashant bhai. It is very much clear. I just want you to throw slightly more light on taxation aspect of this one, in terms of when the premium is paid, how it is deductible, and when the sum assured is received, how it will be taxed.
Okay, thank you. This is in which one? This is in
life insurance taken by a lender on their borrower.
Lender on their borrower. So,
Yes.
so technically, that is outstanding received. See, any interest received, any principal received in the bank. I will take an example of a bank. Bank is a creditor. I am a debtor. I have taken money, right? So, in the books of accounts, in the bank, that is an asset or a liability. Any loan given by the bank is an asset because that's a money recoverable. Any deposit I make in the bank is a liability to the bank because that bank owes that money to me and my family in future, correct? So on the asset side, the money is given. When the money is given by the bank, it is shown as an asset only because it's a receivable. However, when the money comes to the bank, because there's a death of this person, the money is received and they're not receiving any sum assured. Please understand, the money what they receive is only the outstanding, which case they would have received. So it is like loan recovered. That's it. So it shows as an income in the hands of the creditor. Coming to taxation of the person who takes the loan. Obviously, I have taken this money in my individual capacity. The premium which I paid towards the premium, premium which I paid towards the insurance which I've taken, which I've assigned it to the creditor, I can take it under Section 80C. There's a limit of 1.5 lakhs in a year. Did I answer you, sir? Rajesh ji?
Yes. Very well, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So Prashant ji, we have one more question from Mr. Sachin Arbale. So if employer assigned the policy after premium paying term to the employee, employer will pay 10% TDS on surrender value or total paid up premium?
It is on the surrender value.
Okay.
First of all, as an employee, as I clarified to you, the premiums paid by the employer on the life of the employee does not attract any perquisite tax because the ownership is still retained by the employer only. At the time of assignment, if at all the employee has to receive the benefits, that will be added as perquisite under Section 17, Chapter 5, but it is on the surrender value of the plan, not on the premium paid.
So the year which the policy was assigned to the employee, the same has to pay the tax also.
See, there are
And
two
it will
things.
be as per the taxation.
See, when it comes to tax, to be very frank with you, I want to put a disclaimer here. Though I'm not an authority on the tax, we have taken certain, expert views from some of the chartered accountants and some of the auditing firms like Pricewater and also KPMG and those kinds. They have given a lot of case studies. What I also, strongly recommend is when it comes to employer-employee, there are certain things which are very clearly black, very clearly white. There are one or two aspects like this. When should the taxation be attracted? Yes, one school of interpretation states very clearly at the time of assignment, employee has to pay tax because though it is not surrendered, the surrender value is taken as a deemed income in the hands of the employee, so they have to pay tax. And at the time of maturity, the entire maturity benefits will come to employee anyways. But whatever is a total tax liability minus already paid, the remaining amount has to be paid as tax at the time of maturity. Because as I told you in the beginning of employer-employee session, the end beneficiary in a Keyman insurance is the company, whereas the end beneficiary of an employer-employee insurance is the employee and its family, not the employer.
Perfect, perfect. So that was our last question altogether. For addressing all the questions. Over to you, Shantanu.
I'll take the vote of thanks from here, Ashish.
Yes, Kaushal, yes. Please continue.
Yeah. Good evening, all. Has all good things come to an end, and so is this webinar. On behalf of Way to Wealth, I take this opportunity to propose a vote of thanks to our speaker, Mr. Prashant. We are sure his thoughts on topics like legacy planning, Keyman Insurance, MWP Act, partnership insurance, employer insurance would have provided the requisite information to our esteemed participants. We also thank our participants for a valuable time to hear us out. Thank you, ICICI Prudential team and our team at Way to Wealth to help us conduct this event. This event has been done in partnership with our advisors, Messrs. Blossom Advisors and Consultants, Mr. Rajesh Kemani, who is the partner of the same. Blossom Advisors and Consultants is a 5-year young boutique debt syndication firm who has focused on supply chain finance and structured trade finance. Our next webinar as part of our Way to Wealth's ongoing webinar series on the BFSI segment is on cyber liability insurance, which is also collaborated with case studies. We are planning to schedule it in the second week of October. We shall inform you the details very shortly. For this webinar, we shall be mailing you the link, YouTube link of today's webinar with a survey form for your valuable comments. I thank you all once again for your valuable time and your participation for this webinar. Thank you.
I also want to thank for being a wonderful audience. I personally enjoyed delivering this session. Thanks, Sandeep sir, Shantanu sir, for giving me an opportunity to and you can leave it to the chat box. We can revert you in the earliest possible time. Again, thanks for being a wonderful audience.
Thank you so much, Prashant. It was a good, real super session.
Thank you everyone.